We're living through an information Armageddon, where lies spread 6 times faster than facts on social media. Algorithms reward outrage over empathy, spreading fear, anger, and hate, pumping us full of toxic sludge. Regulating technology isn't a free speech issue, it's about public safety. Because as has been proven time and time again, online violence is real-world violence. Information integrity is the mother of all battles. Win this, and we can win the rest. Lose this, and we lose everything. Please choose courage over comfort, facts over fiction, hope over fear. Please act now before it's too late.
สวัสดีค่ะทุกท่านขอต้อนรับเข้าสู่ Cofact Live Talk นะคะ Good evening everyone. Welcome to our Cofact Live Talk on Sunday evening again on special day today. Like many of media organizations around the world call it World News Day in order to emphasize the really important of quality journalism, fact-based journalism that really matter in this day. And following powerful and meaningful speech by Ressa, Nobel Prize winner for peace. She just mentioned at UN General Assembly this year is about how really important for fact-based journalism or information integrity, because now we are in the world of what called information Armageddon. What it is, it seems a new term, but actually it represents the same old thing, a problem that we are facing in the age of digital transformation, which of course has a good impact, and also now we are facing a dark side of it. So join us today our discussion with may I introduce my moderator อาจารย์เจษค่ะผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.เจษฎาสารทองสวัสดีค่ะ Hello good evening อาจารย์ค่ะ
สวัสดีครับโอเค
ค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ Good evening everyone well just like what พี่เก๋คุณสุพิญญา already mentioned about the very impactful speech by Marissa I think that's really make us realize the importance and the crisis of information warfare, you know, and the use of AI that we cannot differentiate between the fact, the truth, and also AI generated content anymore. So that's going to be very, very difficult. So that's going to bring the collapse of institutionalization and also the collapse of trust, you know, when we don't really know what is real, what is unreal, what is generated, what is man-made, you know, all mixed up. So that's going to create a lot of chaotic and around the world. So today we're going to talk about this, right? And Kun Supinya, we have a very special guest today, right? So
Yes. Yeah, very honored and happy to have you again because we met in Taipei 2 years ago for our meeting. So join us tonight, Kun SHATAAKSHI Gurma. Apologies, produced your name wrong. Program and Development Manager from Reporter Without Border, RSF Asia-Pacific Bureau, which she's joining us from Taipei tonight. Good evening, SHATAAKSHI.
Good evening, Supinya. You pronounced it perfectly. Thank you so much for welcoming me here. I'm very glad to speak beside you and Jeff today. And it really indeed is an important topic that all of us need to start talking about. And as Maria Ressa very much also said, that it's going to start affecting each of us eventually. And it will turn into something that we need to start talking about. So even at RSF, I think this year has been quite crucial, where we have seen a trend very similar to what Maria Ressa is pointing out. We're seeing a huge trend of authoritarianism across the world, which is ultimately affecting the quality of information and the narrative that is going to people. And I think it's important to talk. If you would also have seen the World Press Freedom Index of 2025, we shared that almost 72% of this is something that even Maria Ressa pointed out, and that it is under authoritarianism control now, almost 72% of the world, and it has a direct threat to the work of journalists and press freedom also.
Oh, wow. So, so and then the word described by Maria, like information Armageddon, is not, it's realistic. Like you don't think it's too pessimistic.
I think we, as you know, something that she pointed out, we need to start being pessimistic now. If you can't be realistic, I wouldn't say pessimistic. I think it's more realistic.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ah,
you can't be realistic in a time like today, especially same with regard to climate change. We will not be finding solutions. We'll keep thinking, okay, we still have time, when it's important to
okay.
realize that this is the moment that we need to start thinking whatever is happening in Gaza. We've had 240 journalists killed since, and this is not a small thing, everywhere journalism, journalists, right to information is under threat, and this is something that needs to be talked about.
Mhm. Well,
Okay.
Katakshi, so first of all, I think we would like to explore the meaning of information Armageddon. Like, what is it actually? So, can you explain or you reflect from your understanding in like easy words? Like, what is it actually?
I think from what I understand, even from what Maria Ressa said, Armageddon still means there is time, that it's not the end. I think even she shared in her speech that she wasn't saying information, something, there was a word she said, and she was saying, I'm using Armageddon because I'm still a bit optimist. I still hope that I still think there is some time. So I do believe that Armageddon, saying information Armageddon is a warning that in right to information is under threat all over the world. The information is not true anymore. There is lack of truth in the information, which is creating a huge problem of press freedom across the world. And what role do international organizations need to play now as global and coming together on how do you counter something like information Armageddon, which means that we are closer to the end, but we're not still there. And maybe with better solutions, we could prevent it.
Okay. Then in this case, what aspect that you think that this is the threat of information Armageddon? Like in what aspect?
I think there is definitely the aspect of the disinformation that we are seeing, something that Supinia was also pointing out. I think the biggest threat is not being able to provide right information to the people. But I also think there's a huge problem for medias and journalists in themselves on how do they provide information to the public, because if they are not allowed to do their work in an environment like this, and especially with all of these technologically driven platforms, and she was talking about AI as well. If we have no regulatory governance around this, where how platforms are working or how they're providing information, the role of journalists in the media, especially independent media, is going to reduce as well. So I do believe in that terms there is first a monopoly where a lot of platforms are monopolizing information and narrative, which needs to be countered and also governed at the same time.
Mhm. Okay, so how is the information Armageddon a direct threat to safety and professional of journalists in Asia Pacific and anywhere else in the world?
Uh, I think it's of course the information Armageddon is a big part of the threat, but in that has a lot of layers here. Information Armageddon, if we have to say, I think it's becoming, it's a term, but it's also a tool that a lot of authoritarian regimes across our region are now using in order to control the information that the public gets, right? And they're also trying to prevent journalists and media to do their work. There is a huge something that we also shared through our RSF insights in the World Press Freedom Index this year, is that there's been a huge decline in the economic model, right? One of the factors of how we measure press freedom in a country is economics, right? And there's been a huge economic pressure on journalists and medias across Asia Pacific, I would say across the world. And that is also creating this gap of information. Where would the information come from if there are no more independent media being funded, right? So that itself is, I think, a big challenge for us as an Asia Pacific. We've seen in examples of China, in Vietnam, where we are seeing more state-controlled media, and that's the only source of information for people. And so there is no way for us to do check, right? There is no way to check if that's true or not, because there's only one form of information for the people. I would say that is Armageddon, because then I am not getting a multiple diverse information. There's no pluralization of media anymore, right? There's no diverse ideas. We're also seeing the similar things now start in Myanmar, Cambodia. You've seen Hong Kong, how fast there has been a decline of press freedom in Hong Kong, which at one point was considered, and a good point. It was at a point it was a good place with press freedom, and so even within context, and one of the things that for me was very much a stark reminder of what's happening in Asia Pacific is that it seems like if you see the grade, 50% of the people now live in countries where press freedom is considered very serious or not satisfactory at all. That for me is concerning. And Asia Pacific has most of the population, you see, number of our largest population. And so to see that number of people are affected by such large information manipulation, for me, is definitely a direct threat on the public itself and the way we get information, and on the work of journalists and the media as well.
And also the from the real threat, physical. You talk about, of course, press freedom, right to information, and then business model. That's a big thing because of declining of independent professional media. And how is the threat, the real threat to the journalists working from hate speech, from bully or thing, because she said that online violence is the real world violence that also happening to the journalists as well.
Yes, I think that journalists are at the center of this. If you will see some of the work that RSF has done, also we have recently released a report on Russian propaganda. You would see how much journalists and medias are at the center of threatening violence online. We've also seen that now recently, especially from my example, like for me, the experience mostly has come by having lived in Taiwan for 3 years, and my experience in Taiwan has been a lot of online threat is coming from China. For a lot of journalists that are working on China constantly, there was an example of a few documentary filmmakers last year that were completely targeted online. Their personal information were released. Their journalists were harassed constantly for days. They had to leave online spaces. Their profiles they had to close. That creates a lot of mental pressure, torture, and it eventually leads to self-censorship. We've seen that the regulation, the whole pressure that we are seeing amongst media and journalists. First, there's economic pressure where they're not getting enough funding to work, and then there's a lot of mental pressure as well, and on the way the online violence is working and targeting journalists, and these targets are mostly done in countries where there's authoritarianism. So eventually the journalists are not wanting to work. I also teach at a university here in Taiwan, and I teach media literacy, and I am seeing a trend where students don't want to be journalists anymore. They are studying journalism, but every time I ask a question, how many of you want to be journalists, they don't want to raise their hands. And I'm trying to use my class as bringing out examples of a crucial the role it is of bringing true information out in the world.
Well,
Yeah.
the situation is pretty much the same as my class. When I ask my junior students, the freshman, like when I ask them, like, how many of you want to be a journalist? Like, I cannot see like hands showing up. I think that's because first of all, they think that journalist is such a very difficult job, like and plus it's not a lucrative job. It's
Yeah.
not like a career that can make money anymore. And plus, like you're gonna jeopardize your safety and your well-being, like just like what you said, that you have to work under pressure, you have to work with fear, So then what's the future of being a journalist, Like wow, we of course you work for Reporters Without Borders, but as you mentioned that we are working under threat, we are working under pressure, and we're not gonna be a millionaire, we're not
Yeah.
gonna make money because of this. We're not gonna be a rich person. Then what is the future of being a journalist and reporter?
I think one thing I would like to say here, where I would not put the responsibility on the journalist, is that for organizations like us as RSF, at bigger platforms like the UN and other international spaces, I think it's our responsibility to protect journalists. I think the moment we start working with these protection mechanisms that are a must to be provided to journalists and medias, now you will see an uprising in exiled media, because so many media cannot exist and work from their own countries, so they're working from exiled. You have journalists that for example, journalists who are reporting in Gaza, how much protection have they gotten? We as RSF, we've tried a lot. We've been able to give bulletproof jackets. We've also been supporting them with other essential equipment. So I feel like if you can make this profession a more and build protection around it, maybe not so many people would fear coming into it, right? Because you do need actors who will provide you right information, true information. If you don't have that, I would say the information Armageddon will become very real, because then where are you getting the information from? Who is your provider of information? That is my biggest question, even in my class, where I ask, where are you getting your information from? Most of the information are coming from sources that are not fact checked, that are not credible, that are not ethically following all of the journalistic principles. And so uh, that might actually end up making it a big issue. So we want journalists, we want independent journalism to survive. We want send a self-regulatory bodies to make regulations that would allow that would not allow the state to have so much control, at the over media. And we've seen successful models. If you see in terms of course, how successful comparatively it can be in 2025, you'll see that most of the green countries that have good ranking in the press freedom index, they come from the northern Europe
Yeah.
yeah. And so that's because they have we see one of the examples that they do have self-regulatory bodies and that they work within that. So I'm always giving these examples. I was in Malaysia last year, week 2 weeks ago on the digital rights conference, and they were saying that even Malaysia is planning to adopt a self-regulatory committee, a body that will self-regulate media in itself. So let's see how it operates, how it comes, because I think in Asia that could be a good example to set with Malaysia, but that's something to see. But I do believe more work needs to be done. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Well,
you said that,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, please.
Of that, so who should act? So you mean only UN, United Nations, or who else then?
I think the pressure, of course, the pressure can be done by us as an NGO. We're an NGO that does advocacy. We have other NGOs that do advocacy. There is a lot of pressure that we are also building on big organizations. We're also trying to build uh, accountability for countries, especially governments, and we're pushing them. But on the bigger role, I feel like when it has to be globally done, I do believe that other platforms like UN and other platforms do have a big role to play. Especially, for example, Subinia, if I have to give you an example, we're working on China, right? And it is very difficult to find, advocacy partners or in terms of supporters that can be that can advocate. So it is important that we try to work and collaborate with organizations that could put pressure with global organizations like UN, similar to what Maria Ressa was also trying to say. Uh, in terms of other things, as I said, governments also need to adapt regulatory bodies where platforms need to be regulated. Which are owned by corporates, right? They do not have the how do you say, they do not really have our benefit at their heart. So how are governments ensuring that their citizens are getting the right information through these platforms?
Okay. So then, yeah, Maria Ressa said about the possibility of the information Armageddon, but she also mentioned the way out, which called information integrity.
Integrity, yeah.
We try to find the translation for that entire word, but it's very difficult because it looks sophisticated. So can you help us simplify it? What does it mean?
I think from what I understand, information integrity has been a word that has been used in media literacy and fact checking for some time now.
Mm,
I think information integrity is when you are following the ethical principles of
mm,
how information is produced, right? And you have all of the accountability of the
mhm,
information that is produced. So I think integrity is just a word where you have all of these ethics at the center of how information is produced, how it's provided, and how it's consumed. And that is something that is, I think, at the center of a solution that she provides. One of the solutions that
mm,
RSF is working on is very similar to what Maria Ressa was demanding, is how do you bring platforms uh, to be accountable, right? We have an initiative called Journalism Trust Initiative through JTI. We've been trying to work with medias across the world on a process, an independent process of auditing that basically checks through um, how media is produced, how media is consumed, how these platforms work. We've also been through the JTI initiative, we're also working with platforms. How can we bring some regulations within these platforms on the information that is provided, especially in countries where there might be active conflict, because there's the highest chance of misinformation to spread through these platforms. We've seen in the cases of Myanmar in the past. I was in Afghanistan in 2021 when Taliban came back. We saw how big the role of Facebook was in creating false information within a time which was so serious. So we've seen all of that, and that's why it's time that we advocate for all of these platforms to be regulated on a in a
So,
manner that she's saying. Yeah.
so actually, information integrity means the honest of information or media ethic, but it's more than media ethic, which demand like individual or newsroom or journalists. But information integrity is cover the whole system, which
Yes,
includes
yes, yes.
platform, right?
Overall, yes, the
It's
truth.
more
I think it's
structural.
yes.
But
Okay.
yeah, but to regulate platform, Ajahn Jade, is realistic. But Marisa says we have to make it realistic, right? To regulate the tech company, that's too big to be regulated by now. Yeah, but
Yeah.
what you
Well,
think?
actually, I have another case that I would like to ask your opinion as well about it related to information integrity as well. In Thailand, actually there is a case that one of my colleague, uh, พี่แยม Thapani Iet-Srichai, from the reporters, okay, she is such a very hardworking on investigative journalism. Like she always like in the border, in the war zone, in the front row of the protest, like she's always like that. And she tried to make her own media platform as well, like media, social media and small media organization by herself and her team, something like Marisa. However, she always found the problem that there's gonna be someone who just like steal her information or her piece of news. For example, like while she's like in the front row, in the field, like she was about to report it, but then someone who has more followers, like just steal her piece of work, publish it. Then like they gain more followers and eyeballs more than her. That's always a problem in Thailand, like when investigative journalists, very like put their efforts and they resources on the piece of work, then someone who is more into like new celebrity or like someone who has more followers just picked it up and they just copy and paste, right away. And they said that they already gave the source already, but they just pick it up. They just like copy and paste, give the source. That's it. It's always happened in Thailand, I think that's quite related to information integrity. Then in this sense, while followers, they don't really care about the originality. They just care on, like what is look sexy, what is look splashy, and they just follow and share it. What should we do?
I think here this is exactly a very good example of how why media literacy is becoming more important. You see, because here we keep talking about how the role of journalists and the media, but there is a huge role of the citizens in itself, also on how responsible they need to be about consuming news and where do they consume from, where their sources are. This is one of the biggest thing I tackle in my class. I have 70 students in my class, and the biggest thing I'm asking for question that I ask them is, where do you get your news from? Do you know who is the person that's providing you news? Are they have you seen their history? Are they authentic journalists? Do they practice journalism? Who? So I think as readers, as consumers, there's a huge responsibility on us also on where do we consume news. Are we critical enough to ask who is giving me the news? And I think, as you were saying, Jess, this is an example that I was giving in my class last week also, that sensationalism is a news, right? So I'm always asking my students on an activity I do where we compare headlines. So I'm like, okay, tell me which headline is more balanced, right? Because, for example, we had the typhoon in Taiwan. There were of course titles and headlines that were more sensationalized and dramatic, and so somehow as individuals our human capacity, or how do I say, our humanism is to attract such news. We would like something that's more dramatic. We would like to consume. This is something also that Maria Ressa was saying, and very rightly I think she has said again and again, that false information spreads faster, right? False information spreads faster because they have mastered the concept of storytelling. They've mastered how dramatic news can be. And this is something that we are not countering at all. There is a very interesting documentary called War on Truth by Al Jazeera that I have shown in my class. It talks exactly why is it that false information and information that, as you said, is catchy, is more spread faster than true information. That's because it's made into a storytelling aspects where people would like to read it more. They would like to consume it more. So there are that's why I think Subinia was asking before we started, where is fact checking going, and where do we have the organization's future of fact checking. I believe it's important like this. Of course, fact check organizations are necessary, but I believe even citizens need to become responsible consumers. There need to be more media and digital literacy towards the public, towards young students, on how do you consume news and where do you consume it from.
That's true, nah. So we all have to take action in this to prevent at the end of the Armageddon information. But it's huge, because the storytelling, social media, short videos, sort of playing with our emotional games, and it's hard to resist. But I think we need to somehow work together and find something that eventually people got tired with. Now we have something called news avoidance and also news fatigue, which are also not good, right? Because people will be tired from reading serious news and hard news that will affecting the news industry and newsroom and all things like that, So maybe we have to promote traditional style of consuming media back. It looked like auntie saying or something, but who's know, right? Social media detox and maybe come back to read books or watch TV or something. Maybe it's not bad anymore. Wait and see. Maybe we have to for the consumer side, right? But for the media and journalists, they still have to work hard to for fact because finally people still need the
Exactly.
trusted sources. And each in your state and United Nations, they must act together. Yeah, that's what we can do, raising our voice of concern. Hopefully, I think will be
Yes, and I think
somehow
yes, just
gradually.
bringing attention to the platforms need to be regulated. I think we need to
Mhm,
keep advocating for that. That's what Maria Ressa said too, because you can change the consumers, you can try to tell the citizens
mm,
what, but you do need
mm,
to put accountability to the people in power as well.
exactly. So finally, we need to change it at structural level. And then, without talking about AI, maybe final topic about this, but we're going to talk about another way out that the project we're doing together. But Samaria are talking about AI generated content. That of course attracts, and ISF also produced like the shadow on AI, right? Maybe you briefly talk about that. What part of how AI will impact journalism and what should respond? Maybe back to the tech company as well, right?
Yes. I do. Of course, it is going to have an impact if it's not, again, I'm going to say it again, if it's not regulated, right? If you just allow it to be used in any ways, we are already seeing the impact of especially how AI was used during major elections in the last year. We've seen how it was misused, and we do see an increasing use of AI across sectors as well. RSF also has these what we released is called the Paris Ethics Charter on artificial intelligence, and it is a good document to read, which is on our website. It mentions how important it is to bring regulation, government regulatory regulations on using of AI. And I'm saying on a government level, but also on a global level, there needs to be a pact or something that needs to be decided that puts accountability on whoever how AI is used, especially within the journalism sector. So I do believe that would be a big part of how AI is there and how it needs to be regulated within, especially the journalism, the field of
Mhm.
information.
Okay, it's a minute what call re-regulation and non-regulation, but yeah, but it is not easy, but that's one of the solution. To prevent information Armageddon and what is called information integrity, that we have to do things together. Okay, to end this talk, so we're going to do something together, the project training on this topic, especially digital safety, wellness, and especially focusing on the woman journalists. May you briefly tell us about that idea? Why now we have to focus on digital safety
Yes.
and why women
Thank
only?
you. Yeah. I think it relates to your first question about, the online violence and how it has been increasing over the years, especially for journalists. And I do think in context of Thailand and other Asia Pacific countries, women journalists are more vulnerable to online violence and issues of digital threats. And that is why it indeed is very important, and that's what RSF is doing by partnering with Cofact in the coming months, where we will be conducting 2 trainings targeting women journalists in Thailand about how to make themselves digitally secure. We're also going to talk about how fact checking is important. We will also talk about investigative tools like OSINT and other ways of using digital tools, but also keeping themselves digitally secure at the same time, also taking care of their psychological well-being at the same time. I think these are important conversations that we need to start having, and thanks to the support of the Canada Global Affairs, this project has been possible. Thanks to Supinia and Cofact, this project will actually be implemented on the ground. So Yes, Supinya, thanks.
Okay, and Ajahn Jet mentioned about the case of Kun Yam. She's the woman brave journalist. Besides her work being stolen, she got like online attack as well when she covered the issue of
got
controversial
threats,
wildlife.
got doxing, you know, like
Yes,
Uh-huh.
doxing is the biggest issue right now. It's becoming
yeah,
more common, yes, towards journalists and media. We've been hearing a lot of doxing cases from Philippines, Indonesia, and
yeah,
even in Hong Kong. Yeah,
yeah. You should meet her if you come to Thailand. She's
They met
such a
in Taipei 2
I think
years
we
ago.
met in
oh, you
Taipei.
met. Okay, cool. Yeah.
For our trip to Taipei 2 years ago and
Okay,
Cofact trip,
cool. That's the one.
yeah,
That's the
she
one.
joined us
She's
as
the
well.
one. She's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, she one of the leading women journalists here. Hopefully she can join our training, but maybe she's too busy. But if she join, maybe she could be like a trainer. But actually, I think she need a long break
Exactly.
for
Yeah.
like a
Especially um
wellness. Maybe send her to spa or
exactly.
something
Yeah.
for a
I
week.
just I met her a few weeks before and she said that she need like beauty pampered, you know, like to pamper her skin. Yeah, she said.
Well, yeah, she's like a forefront, like war journalist everywhere, where the conflict and tension
Always
should
in the
be
front
there.
row.
That's
Yeah,
always, exhausted emotionally,
exactly.
So exactly. Okay, now Ajahn Jet, would you like to say something or any final questions? And as well, Shatakshi, you have any final word to say,
Yeah,
please?
Chatachi first, please.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Subinya. I think it is a very important conversation that you all have started today. It is something that we need to start talking about. I do believe what I want to say in the end is the responsibility is not just on us or as NGOs, as journalists, as consumers and citizens, but also on all of these creators of platforms and or governments that are putting profit first. The biggest responsibility is on them, and this is where we have to come together to work. So thank you.
Yeah. Well,
Ah,
for me,
Ajahn
I
Jet.
think just like what Chatachi mentioned, that media literacy is really important. Okay. Not only to protect yourself, I mean, as a consumer, to protect yourself from information disorder, but to support the right person, just like what Chatachi mentioned, that you have to be critical enough to consume and support the right person. You have to respect the originality, not only human-made news, but right now we have to be literated enough to filter between AI-generated news and human-made news, and what is the intention of the news making, like with bad intention or not. It's gonna be disinformation, it's gonna be malinformation, it's gonna be misinformation. So you have to be you have to be smart, you have to be wise, in order to consume news wisely. Last word, I always told my student that you are what you eat. You are what you eat, like you're gonna be healthy, you're gonna be fat, you're gonna be unhealthy. It depends on what you eat. Exactly same thing. You are what you consume in terms of news information. If you are not like wise enough, you just like take whatever in front of you, you're gonna be overweight, you're gonna be fat, you're gonna be unhealthy. But if you consume like organically generated, like man-made, that's gonna make your health, your digital health, very, very, very healthy. Right now in Thailand, we talk a lot about longevity. Like we talk about health, so I don't really want you to think only about physical longevity, but in terms of digital longevity, you have to realize on what you're gonna consume to make your digital longevity healthy and sustainable. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, and also you have to change the food industry.
That's
Which
one thing.
which mean to serve a healthy food with a cheap price. So I think we have to all must act now all together. So the individual, we need to change our culture and habits, and media have to hold the ground, hold the line for journalistic principle, like it or not, in a very, very highly competitive world with storyteller, influencer, and KOL, etc. But now we need to demand action from like our global agency to do more work that they're supposed to do, which we have to keep saying, and hopefully they will be saying. Okay, so thank you so much for SHATAAKSHI, Romer from Reporter Without Border, for spending your Sunday evening joining us tonight from this very great discussion. And thanks for your great work along the way as RSF.
Thank you
And
so much,
do
Supinia.
your best.
Yeah.
Take care in the meantime. And Ajahn Jess, thank you so much for joining us
My
tonight
pleasure.
despite
Yeah.
Thank you,
busy
Jeff.
schedule as the graduation ceremony. Until next time, in the meantime, take care. And,
Bye.
yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
ครับ
bye
สวั
bye.
สดี
สวัส
ค
ดี
รับ
ค่ะ
บาย สวัสดีครับ
Bye.
Good night.
โอเค